poet has to have an audience. A dozen or so. Lander, who said he esteemed 10 a sufficient audience, was very optimistic. I know about half a dozen, and these are mainly London-based or where they keep scattered around the world. It may be possible to live in total isolation, but I don't understand how. The audience is important as the poet. There is no audience in Ireland, so I have managed to build up one out of my need, a little audience for myself. The real problem is the scarcity of the right audience, which draws out what poet was best in him. The Irish audience that I came into contact with drew out of me or tried to everything that was loud, journalistic and untrue, such as my soul was an old horse, offered for sale in 20 fairs. Anthologists everywhere keep asking for this. Also asked they for another dreadful job from Mother Ireland. It would never be summer or this autumn. After a harvest all was lost. Thank God I control the copyrights in these poems and nobody can use them. What the alleged poetry lover loved was the Irishness of a thing. Now Irishness is a form of anti-art, a way of posing as a poet without actually being one. The New Lines poets today have invented a similar system. They are also sympathetic to the Irish thing. No young person today would think of coming to live in Dublin as a metropolis. A new awareness is in the air. I remember a young chap accosted me in a Dublin street a couple of years ago. He was from the southern part of Éire, and he was on his way to Rome to take up the poetry trade. He was right too. At least something might happen to him there. A rich woman might take a fancy to his poetry or himself and keep him in the decency and comfort which is a necessity of the poets. I pause here to emphasize that I have no belief in the virtue of place. Many misguided persons imagine that living in France or Italy is the equivalent of a liberal education. French in particular is the language of art. Still, Dublin hasn't it. The possibilities for getting hitched up to a rich woman, that is about the only way a true poet can remain true and keep up an adequate supply of good whiskey. And now it is around 1955 and I'm wandering around Dublin when I run into a poetry lover. How are we getting on at all to see with much pity? The instinct to do a good day's deed has always been a weakness with me, so I reply, terrible, poor fellow. I said, what can I do? And you're not writing any poetry those times. I never see anything by you in the Irish Times. The flash is gone. I say the flash is gone. I suppose. A terrible scandal if the government doesn't do something for our Irish poets. There are 40 or 50 major poets in this country today, and if I had me way, they'd all have a civil suspension. Paddy has been working for that this many a year. Is the health all right again? I cough hard and send him away happy. I won't be long in it. And that City Hall booking for my lying-in state can be taken up. And that was interesting too, when I was above in the Rialto Hospital, and the report of my impending demise spread, two well-wishers decided to do me proud in death. They would have me waked in the City Hall. A journalist friend of mine brought in me the news as lay in hospital at the end of a real tether which was attached to the bottom of the bed, and to rise sitting you pulled on the rope. It must have been disappointing that I didn't oblige. I fear that the mood I have been evoking may give the impression that what happened to me is important, and that I am important. Nobody's major. Nobody's important. We get to our destiny in the end. I am not in the least bitter about all this. In fact, I am always in danger of bursting out laughing. I merely state the facts. Of course, I do not blame some of these people. I have been assailing the myth of Ireland by which they were managing to beat the artistic rap. I had seen and shown that this island thing was an undignified business, the trade of enemies and failures. The English lower orders and their vices, the popular journalists, wanted a certain image of the Irishman, one that would make them feel better. But of recent years, a small group of Irishmen in London founded an enclave, of which I happen to be one, which did not tolerate such blackguardism. Some of those newspaper men were very humble if they happened to be allowed into that company, and they knew better their place better than write about them. For that is indeed one thing to be said about English newspapers. They hardly ever gossip about poets, only about actors and film and telly stars. Creating that stuff, the handouts telling us of the stars and their affairs on the set, all supposed to be real life stuff. For a number of years I was a film critic. I attended the Irish Film Society shows of a Saturday and wrote as enthusiastically as the next man about the marvellous Italian film, the photography, the direction, the director, a man of superb genius. And that was before I learned the difficult art of not caring, of having the courage of one's feelings. But it didn't take me quite a while before I came out with the terrible disclosure that I thought of most of those foreign films what George III thought of Shakespeare. Poor stuff, but one must not say so. I burdened my way through the film critic's world, till in the end I was unable to say another word. If I'd been able to stick it out, I would probably today be a maker of films or a director of telly shows, or even one of those suave chaps who talk on telly, who are all noted for an excellent head of hair, unlike myself, and who all have the same smiling face and the same age too, frozen at 39. See what I missed, and see what the public missed. Ah, that's what it was. And amongst the other things I missed, one I did somewhat regret was refusing the offer of writers to go in as a reporter with the second front. Look at the fellow who wrote The Longest Day. Once again and always, I was showing my cautious, respectable nature instead of letting it rip. This has been a great defect in my nature. On the other hand, I know of quite a couple of very fine poets in England who avoided the draft, one by pretending to be bonkers. But everyone has to his fancy. I was a difficult class of animal. I should have done something. Another great experience was my law case, here and after to be known as the trial, or perhaps trial and error. Curious thing is that an event so seemingly large at the time tends to disappear in the perspective of a few years and joins with the rest as being comic material. What seems of public importance is seldom of any importance. Stupid poets and artists think that by taking subjects of public importance that it will help their work to survive. But there is nothing as dead and damned as an important thing. The things that really matter are casual, insignificant things. Things you would be ashamed to talk of publicly. You are ashamed, and then after years, someone blabs, and you find that you are in a secret majority. Such is fame. Of my early Dublin experience, I have little of value to offer. In the frosty winter of 1946, I went around trying to sell a contraption for attaching to furnaces to conserve the heat, which was scarce those days. I spent a fortnight tramping the frozen streets of Dublin, my contraption rejected and denounced by all sorts of janitors. Eventually in the furnace, not the bargain basement, the furnace basement of a Grafton Street store, the boss foreman made a competent remark about my article. As shown in the illustrated folder, I couldn't actually carry the machine around me, which was more than 100 weight. £25 was the price, but he decently enough said there wasn't a whit the matter with the idea if it came at a fiver. What about a fiver, he said, for a trial? Morality triumphed over commerce. And say, it's no worth 5 shillings, never mind £5. It's a complete fraud. In those days in Dublin, the big thing besides being Irish was peasant. They were all trying to be peasants. They'd been at it for years. But I hadn't heard, and I was installed as the authentic peasant. And what an idea that was among bowsies pretending to have an interest in poetry. Although the literal idea of the peasant is of a farm-labouring person, in fact, a peasant is all that mass of mankind who live below a certain level of consciousness. They live in the dark cave of the unconscious, and they scream when they see the light. They take offence easily. The degree of insultability is great. I have written that I trained in the slum pubs of Dublin among the most offensive class of all, the artisans. I'm equal to the problem. I let it ride and there is nothing over. I understand through all these years that my difference in their company is an intrusion that tears at the sentimental cliches. They can see my heart squirm when their star indicts the topmost 20 in the lower flights. No, sir, I did not come unprepared. Which brings me to something that I might say is the very heart of the matter of human contentment, or as near as we can get. This is the secret of learning how not to care. Not caring is really a sense of values and a feeling of confidence. A man who cares is not the master. And one can observe this in the matter of simply singing in the rain or in a pub. The fellows who are around Christmas singing pubs are not simply chaps enjoying themselves. Enjoying themselves has nothing to do with it. They are expressing themselves. This is their art, their reason for existence. And they are usually very humble and ashamed of their own selves, for they always assume the part of some singing star or other. No wonder I split them. Do I blame them? Few people have the courage to be themselves, and when they do appear themselves, it is all put on with spadefuls of bravado. It took me many years to learn, to relearn not to care. A Hartman. I will illustrate the poem there. On a Raglan road, on an autumn day, I met her first and knew that her dark hair could weave a snare that I might one day rue. I saw the danger, yet I walked upon the enchanted way, and I said, let grief be a fallen leaf at the dawning of the day. What about that song is that I don't care. The tune is not caring. But in the beginning of my versing career, I had hit on the no-caring Jerry. And yet there was nobody to tell me that I was on the right track. Shankered up, my black hills have never seen the sun rising. Eternally they looked north towards Armagh. Well, you see, there are two, that was one kind of simplicity. But there are two kinds of simplicity. There is the simplicity of going away and the simplicity of returning. The last simplicity is the ultimate in sophistication. In the final simplicity, we don't care whether we appear foolish or not. We talk of things that earlier would embarrass us. We are satisfied with being ourselves, however small. And so it was on the banks of the Grand Canal between Bagot and Leeson Street bridges in the warm summer of 1955, I lay and watched the green waters of the canal. I had just come out of hospital, leafy with love banks, and the green waters of the canal pouring redemption for me, that I do, the will of God, will wallow in the habitual, the banal, grow with nature again as before I grew. And so in this moment of great daring I became a poet. For except in very brief moments in my very early years, I had not been a poet. The poems in his soul for sale are not poetry, and neither is the great hunger. There are some queer and terrible things in the great hunger, but it lacks the nobility and repose of poetry. The trouble, as I may have mentioned earlier, is that there are so few who would know a poem from a hole in the ground. It is possible, on the other hand, to recognize a poet, for the animal is recognizable. The main feature about a poet, if you ever happen to meet one, and that is a remote chance that I can't be everywhere at the one time, the main feature is his humorosity. Any touch of boringness and you were in the wrong shop. Beautiful women, I am glad to say, are capable of recognizing the best. Recently a man was presented to me as being a great poet. He wrote in Irish. I expressed me doubts, and the introducer said, how can you doubt me to another language? That was a soul, but I was able for it. I said, I can't bawl like a cow, but I'd know a cow if I saw one. A poet is born and not made is a well-known saying, but this doesn't mean that he was a poet the day he was physically born. For many a good-looking day I wrote hard at versing, but I would say that as a poet I was born in around 1955, the place of my birth being the aforesaid banks of the Grand Canal. 30 years earlier, Shankaduff's watery hills could have done the trick, but I was too thick to take the hint. Curious this, how I had started off with right simplicity, indifferent to crude reason, and then threw a cloud my way, through complexities and anger, hatred and ill will, towards the faults of man, and came back to where I started. For one of the very earliest things I wrote, even predating Shankaduff, started, child, do not go to the dark places of the soul, for there the grey wolves whine, the lean grey wolves. In that little thing I become airborne and more, and it shaved weightlessness. Then I heard about having one's roots in the soil, of being a peasant, and I raged at Monaghan, and the clay and all that. And poetry has to do with the real reality of the spirit of faith and hope, and sometimes even charity. It is a point of view. The poet is a theologian. Arts counsellor and the like love to believe in the poet as a simple singer piping down the valleys wild. When Shelley said that poets were the real legislators of the world, he was right. Or they may not have fully understood his rightness. A poet is an original who inspires millions of copies. Education consists of the copying of a good motto. Reverting to my public career, I must mention that adventure when I edited and wrote a weekly, Cavernous Weekly, in 1952. We had no ads, a distinction that looks like being the fate of many newspapers before the century is out. I wrote most of the paper, including the poems, letters to the editors, etc. Why do people engage in such blind madness? But recently look up the files, I read something that was relevant. On school reports I wrote, quoting Longfellow, there are things of which I may not speak. How strange things happen to a man. He dabbles in something and does not realize that it is life. That was what I wrote then. And yet I had not yet been born, as I believe I afterwards was. Though perhaps some folks may not agree. Doesn't matter anyway. I did arrive at complete casualness. I'd been able to play a true note on a dead slack string. This year my friend John Jordan, who was about to bring out a poetry magazine, asked me for a stave, and from my redoubt in Monaghan I sent this message to my peoples. I'm here in a garage in Monaghan. It is a June day and the weather is warm. Just a little bit cloudy. There's the sun again. Lift into importance my 16-acre farm. There are 3 swallows' nests in the rafters above me, and the first clutches are already flying. Spread this news widely. Tell all if you love me. You who knew that when sick I was never dying. Nay gain, nay frail stone. for taking a rest like John Jones, and so on. One wiseacre said that a garage in one hand couldn't be poor's. And another of the same mental trajectory said that I was going back to me roots, and I was going to that class of country stuff. Well, that's where it was. Courage is nearly everything. Our impulses are always right. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Mother, we explode ridiculously, uncode a habit, and find therein a successful human being.